Mr. Lakomaa, in Austria, in Germany, in Switzerland, there is no voucher system. Could you please explain why and how Sweden introduced the voucher system?
I think there are two reasons. The first one has nothing to do with voucher per se, but the cost of education escalated quite rapidly during the 1980s. And that was the basics for transferring the responsibility for primary and secondary education from the state to the municipalities, because otherwise the cost level of cost of education would have been unsustainable. At the same time, it was in 1992, the first decision was taken before that, but the decentralization took place at the same time as the voucher system. And actually, the voucher system has also two parallel processes. First of all, for school choice, which meant the reason behind that was widespread discontent with the very centralized educational system in Sweden. Students were allocated to government-operated school, and you were assigned to the school closest to your home. And they were highly centralized. There were very few private options, about 5 in total, catering to like a boarding school for mainly people in the diplomatic corps. There were one Estonian school, one Jewish school, etc. So very, very few alternatives, and educational results also started to decline. So there are two parallel processes: one for cost, which caused decentralization, and one for choice, which was the cause of the introduction of the voucher system.
Which political forces supported the introduction of the voucher system?
We had a center-right government at the time, and so that was in 92 when the decision was
made. It was Mr. Bildt?
Bildt was the prime minister in Sweden in 92.
And the leftist parties were opposed it from the beginning?
Yeah, they voted against it, but the support among voters for choice is fairly high. So it's not been abolished. We have had like center-left or left governments about half the time after 1992, but none of them have abolished the system. So even though they are in the political rhetoric are criticisms against the voucher system and school choice, it's not been abolished.
Would you please explain how this system works?
You have the right to choose I shouldn't say any, but in your municipality, a municipal school, or if they exist, what they call an independent school, which is a privately operated, could be for-profit or non-profit, but they are given for each student the voucher amount, which is set by the municipalities. So, but the parents don't see the money; they go directly to the school or the school operator, but are allocated on a number of students that chooses this particular school. So you have choice as a parent or a family, and there should be no difference between private or public schools. You could choose between different private schools and different public schools. In some cases, you could also choose schools outside your municipality because you have agreements between municipalities. This is the case in most of the municipalities in the Stockholm region and also in this southernmost part of Sweden, where you have like a larger school market with cooperation between. So you could live in one and choose a school in another, and they clear the voucher amounts between them.
On the voucher, there is written 5 years of school, or
no, it's not. It's set every year, and the municipality actually allocates what we say. This is the voucher amount, and this is what we will pay our schools. And then if there are students in a private school, that is approved because you need approval from a government authority in order to operate a private or independent school, as it's called. Then you get the same amount. There are some differences because they adjust on different tax policies, and you could also have, you're allowed to adjust the amount for if you have special needs students, etc. But the basic idea is that it shouldn't matter financially if you are a public or a private operator.
So Does it mean that the parents know the price of the voucher?
No, they don't. That's actually one of the, I should say features, but that's one of the characteristics of this voucher. Most people would probably not know the exact amount. The amounts are sometimes discussed, that this municipality is spending this amount and that municipality is spending another amount on, because there are quite large differences from the highest to like the lowest cost to the highest cost municipality is about, I think it's more than 50% at this time. So, but it's also reflect the cost structure in the municipality. You could have a labor market with like a lower average salary level. You could have lower cost for facilities, etc., due to local market conditions. So these differences between municipalities are one of the features to keep costs down. But if you have a set amount for the entire country, you will have that schools in like low-cost areas would get, like, you have an automatic net margin of 40% if you set it so you could keep schools in every municipality, or you set it on the average, and then every school in large number of municipalities would operate at a loss. So that's one of the features, that the municipalities set the amount, and it should reflect local conditions. And it could also reflect local demand, because this is like political decisions. So as people are voting for municipal leadership, then this could, of course, be an electoral issue, that we should spend more or we should spend less on education.
Mm-hmm. And how is it administrated? Is it easy to manage it?
The vouchers are, the amounts are like paid automatically, so that's not. But you need, in order to operate a school, if you were to establish an independent school, you will send an application to the Swedish School Inspectorate, and it could be granted or it could be declined, and you need to meet certain criteria for like financial stability, and you need to be approved as an operator. You can't have any background if you are, if you're sentenced for fraud, you can't operate a school, for example, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, and you need to have like an approved curriculum, which is, most of them are using the standard, but you could have some deviations. You could cater, for example, to some minority groups, or you could have special pedagogic niches, and some. You have some leeway as a private operator. The public schools need to operate honor the standard curriculum, but you need approval. Otherwise, you can't receive voucher money if you're not approved.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds very good, but what's the dark side of the system?
The dark side, I don't know exactly what if you look at the political debate, there are the criticism mainly from the political left, but it's not about the choice per se. But it's saying that since you have for-profit schools, if they make a profit, they are like siphoning resources from the children to the corporate coffers, which is like a general critique to like companies. That's one of them. The other criticism that have been is that they might drive cost. And we could discuss all of this. And also that since students or families have a choice, there is an incentive for schools to inflate grading in order to attract students. So if you ask me for an A, I will give an A, because you could say, I won't get an A, I will change to another school, which will treat me better. Mm. I should say on the theoretical level, the first one is like classic,
free
like
choice.
The classic. If you have corporations, you will have this criticism for people that don't like. But there is a component that makes sense, since you can't add anything on like the voucher amount. In order to have a profit, you need to have lower cost than the municipal school. It could be that you're more efficient, and there are efficiencies in the school system, especially you have what is called like step cost. So if you have one class, you will have one teacher, one classroom. If you have two, but you will also have one headmaster, you will have a library, you will have school healthcare, you will have the administration, etc. So if you have 30 students, one classroom, you will have the same cost for overhead as a school with 15 or 20 classrooms and teachers. So larger school would mean you're more efficient. So efficiencies might cause a school to be able to operate on a profit, and that's one. It's also that you could balance the number of students, because if you, and this is part of these step costs, so if you say the maximum amount that could fit in a classroom is like 32. If I have, and in fifth grade I have 32 students. If you have 33, you need another classroom. So by staying below this number, you could operate efficiently. On the other hand, if you lose 1 or 2 students, you have the same costs for 29, 30, or 31 as for 32. So these management on the margins might cause the profit. If you look at profit levels, it's on average not 4%. It's about 1 or 2 students per classroom. But you could say if you don't like companies or profits, you could say that, okay, this could have been spent in an alternative world on the students. That's one of the criticism.
Is there any studies about which strata of the society are more or less inclined to take to use the voucher system?
Yes, there are, but I think the driving factor is that most independent schools are in the larger cities. So you have more choice if you live in Stockholm or Gothenburg than if you live in the countryside. And that's reflects because it will reflect the demographics of larger cities. So for example, you have a somewhat higher proportion of students with immigrant background in independent schools, but that basically reflect that you have more people with immigrant background in larger cities, for example. But otherwise you have, I should say that it's about, in primary education, it's about 16% that have enrolled in private or independent schools. And in secondary education, it's about 31, I think. So the majority is still in public schools, but in some areas there are no independent schools at all. So no competition. So almost a third of Swedish municipalities have no competition at all.
So that means that for the moment, the migration problem, which is a huge problem in Sweden, has no impact on this.
Yeah, it has an impact because it's of course different to teach if you have a student that know the language, have participated in education from like year 1 or like grade 1, and compared to one that might arrive when he's 10, when he's 12, don't know the language. That's of course is a challenge. So it will affect how you organize education and also outcome, but it's like automatic effects. So there will be an impact. If there is an impact on choice, that's up for debate. I don't really know if schools have changed in order to cater to different groups, for example.
Would you change anything in the system for the moment?
I think there are things that could be changed. First of all, if you look at the criticism against the system, and I think the legitimacy is really important, because you need to be accepted that the system is fair, it's transparent, etc. Much of criticism for grading is that you don't have external objective measures of student knowledge. You could have that. I think you should introduce that, because then you will have a benchmark. So you could see, is there grade inflation or not? Are students in independent schools or public schools learning what they should, or is that just they're reporting because you have this problem with that teachers are grading their own students. Mm-hmm. So you could, if I wanted to be kind to you, I could give, that applies to university students as well, but you have it. I think you would need an independent measure of quality. You should measure what is called value added, that you measure what is the contribution from the school from during 1 year. So you have like one test at the beginning of the semester and one or for the course or after. So you can see that students with this or that background improved or didn't improve when they enrolled in certain schools. You have this I think that's important for legitimacy. There also a problem, I should say, with the Swedish system. I think that's also one of the explanatory factors for not having larger effects on educational outcome from competition, because in some areas, as I mentioned, it's very little competition. That's one of them. You can't force someone to operate a school. So you can't say, you need to have another school in this area. If there's no demand or it's no one willing to operate, you can't force them. But the other side of this is that many schools are quite small and it's hard to operate smaller schools. So in Sweden, for a very long time, the size, especially for independent schools, were, I should say, far below minimum viable size. So, and this average school size has increased over time, but still with international standards, especially compared to the studies on what we call school efficiency or the efficient size of schools in the United States, where most of these research exists, where you say between 14 or 2,100 students. You have very few, less than a handful of schools in total at that size in Sweden. The average is I think 229 or 226 or something. So the schools are small. I think you should design the system so you can't have a school with 50 students or 20 students. The smallest are usually special cases, but the average or the median school is still small in Sweden and probably smaller than what is like sustainable if you want to provide quality education. But that goes both for independents and in public schools. But since you have, and I think that's what we consider the flip side of school choice. If you ask parents what they value when they choose a school, I made such a survey in 2018. They have factors like there shouldn't be violence in schools, there shouldn't be bullying, makes sense. They also have like talking about teacher quality, number of teachers, the reputation of the school. But 70%, regardless of what they answered on the survey, still chooses the school closest to their home, which means that you reduce the competitive effects, but also in order to have schools that are close to people's homes, they need to be small. So you have this dilemma of like to value closeness, but it's hard to operate the schools at a size that everybody could have a school within walking distance from their home. So that's the I think the main what can I say, design flaws. The last one is that I didn't mention that Sweden had, from like the perspective of being able to evaluate the system, had a large number of other reforms at the same time and continuously. They changed the grading system, they changed the curricula, they changed teacher education, they changed the length of high school programs, they changed the number of them, etc., etc. There are more than 50 major school reforms over this period. So it's hard to isolate effects of one of them because you have confounding variables.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.